everyone. Hopefully you get an opportunity to take in the trade show that's upstairs. We have 32 exhibitors this year, and so it's a pretty good turnout. Of course, it's been quite a while since we've had the opportunity to all get together. It's actually been over 4 years since we've had our little trade show event, because the first one was scheduled to happen just as COVID rolled in. So here we go. Anyway, our first speaker, we're going to be having 4 speakers this afternoon, but the first round is going to be Heather Campbell with Alberta Innovates. This is a special opportunity, and I want to thank you very much for, hopefully she's going to reach out to her crystal ball and give us an idea what we can all expect in the future. Because I guess we're the people that actually have to pull this off. So, it's an excellent opportunity to learn. So the title of the topic is Opportunity and Energy Transition, Why Clean Technology is Critical to Alberta. Well, just not Alberta, it's everywhere, worldwide. And so I'll give you a little introduction to Heather. Heather Campbell has a diverse 25-year energy career in a full range of energy industries. She presently serves as the Executive Director, Clean Technology, Alberta Innovates. Ms. Campbell holds a Bachelor of Engineering degree or Bachelor of Engineering Science degree in Biochemical and Chemical Engineering from Western University, in addition to a Master of Laws in Energy Law and Policy from University of Dundee. She is a licensed professional engineer practicing in Alberta. Heather is an engaged lifelong community volunteer, actively sharing her talents, resources, and time by participating and often leading a purposely diverse range of organizations. Ms. Campbell is a board director with Calgary's Centre for Performing Arts, Arts Commons, is a member of the Advisory Council for Western Engineering, and is a commissioner with the Calgary Police Commission. She is the former co-chair of Alberta's Anti-Racism Advisory Council. Wow, busy.
Sounds late.
Yeah, that just makes me tired. Anyway, so anyway, we are very privileged to have a few moments of her time, and nobody else is telling us what's going on. So just do what you can. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much for that introduction, Mark. And I'm going to lose the mask and risk a COVID infection. Not saying any of you have COVID, but the numbers are going up.
Yeah.
So, and you all know about wastewater data because you're building operators. So thank you very much. Again, I am Heather Campbell. I appreciate the invitation to come in front of you today as building operators and some folks who do some practical hands-on work and understand things. I am Executive Director, Clean Technology with Alberta Innovates. The Clean Technology team that I lead, which is within another department called Clean Resources, handles CCUS, hydrogen, bioenergy and circular economy, renewable and alternative energy, and critical minerals and emerging technology. So yes, all the things. And in my work with Alberta Innovates, I come to you from Calgary, Winston, where I live as a guest on the traditional Indigenous lands of Treaty 7 and Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. See if that works. so clever that Here I thought I was being very clever and bring this over here. It's too far distance. Okay. So you know what? I'll just
Bear with it.
I can do 2 steps. And I'm pretty tall. I got decent legs, so it's all right. I'll get over there. So a little bit about Alberta Innovates. Alberta Innovates is a provincial corporation under the Ministry of Jobs, Economy and Innovation. So we were created by what's called the Alberta Research and Innovation Act, specifically to support research and innovation activities, including those directed at the discovery, commercialization, and application of knowledge. As Alberta's innovation engine, we firmly believe that innovation is key to growing the economy, expanding markets, and creating new and better opportunities for Albertans. We serve entrepreneurs, businesses, and researchers at any point from discovery through applied testing, validation, to commercialization and end use. Our work spans the full spectrum of sectors, from healthcare to forestry and food production, artificial intelligence, academic research, and clean energy to carbon capture. Not only do we assist in the early stages of idea and concept, but when clients are actually validating and scaling is required to help them explore global markets and partnerships, we're the innovators firsthand. We make technical expertise, funding, which my department does quite a bit of, networks, applied research and engineering, capabilities, facilities, all of it, all the things, publicly accessible to help de-risk technologies, stimulate startups, and draw funding and investment to Alberta. In fact, about 63% of Calgary-based high-tech entrepreneurs were actually supported through Alberta Innovates. I won't even be subtle about it because maybe I'll do a little pirouette on the way next time. We'll see how this goes. Alberta Innovates owns early stage testing equipment and lab facilities to ensure that we have broader access to research, to infrastructure, because that research infrastructure is often required at startup, scale-up, and operational levels for innovation. Innotech itself is a leading research and technology organization serving the needs of industry, thank you, entrepreneurs and the public sector. This leading edge expertise in industrial scale research and demonstration facility allows entrepreneurs and innovators to accelerate the de-risking of their technology development and deployment with a focus on industrial solutions and commercial application. So we're talking about one of our subsidiaries, which brings basically $118 million of investment in innovation infrastructure, over 1 million square feet of research and lab space, and over 600 acres of farmland for research and testing. So as operators, you can imagine what that looks like for our facilities person. His name's Kevin. The newest addition to this asset base is something we call the Alberta Carbon Conversion Technology Center. We abbreviate that the ACCTC, and I challenge you to say that quickly several times, and that's in Calgary. And it was home to the Carbon X Prize and the Carbon X Prize winner, Carbon Cure, and others. Carbon Cure is a Canadian company that actually takes CO2 and does a CO2 utilization work to actually embed that CO2 in concrete for building purposes. Facilities like this, like the ACCTC, and those that are provided by Innotech, remove a cost barrier and attract world-leading scientists, researchers, industry clients, and act as an incentive to keep innovators, industries, and researchers right here and in Alberta. Thank you. The last of our subsidiaries is CFR Technologies. CFR provides applied engineering services and testing to advance safety, efficiency, and environmental performance in partnership with the energy industry. CFR can assist entrepreneurs in developing, testing, and demonstrating new technologies. They also help end users find the best suitable technologies for validating the performance of those technologies in independent, full-scale field tests or pilot-style field tests. CFR also provides bridging activities by working with the industry to develop new technical standards to ensure the safe, reliable, and efficient implementation of new technologies. So when you think about committees like CSA, Canadian Standards Association, and the pipeline specifications that come out of CSA, like B313 and CSA Z662, ASME B313 and then CSA Z662 for pipelines. We actually have team members from CFR who sit on those committees and help to develop those actual specifications that become part of the work and application that you do. With hydrogen and CCUS technologies advancing as tools towards net zero, CFR is looking at the complexities of transporting gas and hydrogen mixes, hydrogen and CO2 from production to storage and to market. A little bit about last little plug for Alberta Innovates. We're not new. We've been doing this for 101 years. You may know us as the Alberta Research Council, you may know us as AITF, you may know us as AIEES, you may know us as about, a number of different acronyms. But the point is, Alberta Innovates and its predecessors have been an integral part to the province's scientific and economic history. It was the Scientific and Industrial Research Council that was actually the first of its kind in Canada. So as Albertans, we were the first to do this. Since then, the province has used science, research, and innovation to help Albertans grow and thrive, and we're focused on the next 100 years. We've set our sights on fostering the growth and adoption of new and emerging technologies across our province, particularly in traditional sectors, and on creating new digital-based industries. In doing so, it's really just our simple aim to help diversify the provincial economy, expand the knowledge workforce, decarbonize the energy sector, facilitate the energy transition, improve health and well-being, and bring new prosperity, and simply find new ways of doing old things. All right, let's get into it. Clean technology at Alberta Innovates. Clean technology really addresses sustainability while creating opportunity for economic diversification in Alberta. We need to consider more than just achieving net zero. We also need to actually establish the mindset and the simple tools to stay there. Right now, the conversation on net zero is really focused on the technologies and the achievements and the dates and the amount of emissions reduction. But we also need to be thinking about the behaviors and the values that are actually going to get us there. Quite practically speaking, we're talking about reducing emissions and achieving our environmental performance goals when we talk about clean technology. That's it. I mentioned the 4 teams and the overview was there, but we'll get into the big one, and that's CCUS and hydrogen. CCUS, when we talk about that, clean technology is a massive opportunity for Alberta, and we're well positioned to capitalize on the emergence of clean technology as a transformative driver of our economy. Now, clean technology didn't just happen. It's the manifestation of years of research and innovation that's come to fruition in Alberta. Carbon capture, utilization, and storage, we abbreviate it as CCUS, is an example of that actual phenomenon. Frankly, when we talk about it, Canada's oil and gas sector is Canada's largest emitting sector, and it accounts for about 26% of Canada's emissions. Full stop. CCUS is how we deliver on our climate change goals in the oil and gas sector. This is one of the solutions. Alberta has 50 years of experience in researching and developing CCUS technologies. This did not just happen. We've been working on this new way of doing things, clean technology, for half a century. Addressing climate change is the challenge of our lifetimes. No, not yet. Alberta Innovates has recently published a white paper on CCUS technology, which takes into account that CCUS is considered to be a clear pathway for the Canadian governments and industry to reach their net zero ambitions. Alberta has invested approximately 140 million Canadian in more than 100 CCUS projects in the last 25 years. These investments have contributed to Alberta's international leadership and reputation in carbon capture, storage, and utilization, and also in measurement, monitoring, and verification, what we abbreviate as MMV. Alberta is well positioned with the enormous CO2 storage capacity, estimated to be about 100 billion tons geologically, and we're home to commercial projects and demonstrated CCUS technologies backed by years of research and experience. Now, let's talk a little bit about hydrogen, and I think that's exactly why Mark invited me here. Hydrogen is a critical part of Alberta's decarbonization future. It is one of Canada's most exciting economic transformation opportunities to help businesses grow, dramatically reduce emissions in the industrial sector, and enable a new Canadian competitive advantage in low-carbon economy. Alberta's hydrogen strategy, which was developed by Alberta Energy, and it's actually housed within the natural gas strategy and vision, was published in late 2021. You can look it up on the website, on Alberta Energy's website, actually on Alberta Government's website. It's there for all to read. But of particular interest to me in that strategy is the Hydrogen Centre of Excellence. And the Hydrogen Centre of Excellence itself is expected to deliver the research and innovation aspects to actually create a hydrogen economy for Alberta. The centre itself will support the leadership at technology, innovation, and demonstration projects across the hydrogen value chain. So that's production, storage, transportation, carrier, like liquid organic hydrogen carriers. We'll get into that in a bit. And market and end use of hydrogen. So again, across that entire hydrogen value chain to demonstrate hydrogen safety, full public awareness, and confidence in hydrogen, so that we can advance those technologies across Alberta's economy and across the hydrogen supply chain. Thank you. So, a little bit about the breakdown of the Hydrogen Centre of Excellence, which I know is what attracted Mark to invite me here. So, hydrogen is one of those, again, exciting opportunities. It is really about, again, decarbonization, achieving low carbon economy, and achievement of our environmental performance objectives. The center itself is really broken into, I'm going to say, 3 areas where we talk about the ecosystem pieces, we talk about technology, and we talk about services. There is a considerable public awareness portion of hydrogen when we deal with the Hydrogen Centre of Excellence, and a substantial public awareness campaign will actually be developed within the Centre of Excellence. It's something we're working on right now with some pollsters and some surveying to actually understand what Albertans understand about hydrogen, so that when you folks as building operators are faced with mixes of hydrogen and natural gas, you know what to tell your residents and your clients, both residentially and commercially. But it's really about informing the public about the scope, the benefits, the deployment of the hydrogen economy. And really, when we think about Albertans, and I often use my mom, my late mom, as my stakeholder engagement benchmark. If I can explain it to my mom, then everything's cool, right? But when it comes right down to it, technology adoption by Albertans is really actually contingent on knowledge, understanding, and acceptance of hydrogen as a decarbonization pathway and fuel component. They've got to know what it's all about. They've got to trust who's doing it. They got to know why we're doing it in the first place, and that it's going to help them out from an environmental perspective, and then they're good. It's really just about that. When we look at the opportunity analysis, we're doing a bunch of stakeholder engagement work in the development of a hydrogen roadmap, and that allowed us to identify the incremental technology that we require to deliver a hydrogen economy, as well as the technology gaps that we need to close, and the research and innovation as a whole to facilitate investment in this space for Albertans. In terms of partnerships, Alberta Innovates, C4 Technologies, and Innotech are all experienced in developing those innovation project partnerships. On the actual competitions and the Center of Excellence, the first round of competitions is actually out for technologies to close those technology gaps in production, storage, carrier, and market end use. The reviews have been completed, and the project proponents are now developing their full project proposals, which are quite substantial. Work is underway on the capital project upgrades to laboratory and testing facilities at C4 and Innotech, so that they're able to provide the testing and validation facilities for hydrogen economy. When we're talking about hydrogen and pipelines, C4 is fundamental to that conversation because, of course, we deal with embrittlement. When you look at hydrogen, we need to actually look at whether it's an entirely new pipeline specification and how we deliver that regulatory framework to support transportation of hydrogen, whether it's in a mix with natural gas or it's on its own. If we're looking at an export market and having to produce hydrogen in Alberta, transport it to Tidewater, and then have it move by some sort of marine vessel, which has yet to be designed, to Asian markets. Alberta has led. The rest of governments and other stakeholders can make effective financial contributions as well to accelerate and transform Alberta's hydrogen economy. And across Canada, companies are doing trials to look at blending quantities of hydrogen into natural gas for residential and commercial heating and energy use. Hythane, as we abbreviate it for a mix of natural gas and hydrogen, is happening on the regular across Europe and is quite active in Australia as well. We're literally catching up in North America. And that's probably primarily fundamentally because we've had such low pricing on natural gas for so long. We primarily make substantial quantities of hydrogen in Alberta. We are the largest producer of hydrogen by nature of the use that we have for it in refining and petrochemicals for hydrotreating, hydrocracking, things of that nature. Producing hydrogen traditionally has been done through a process called steam methane reforming with natural gas. The off products of that are, of course, hydrogen and CO2. And I'll let you go back to do your grade 11 chemistry to figure out how all that works out. And natural gas, you want to call it methane, and that's C with 4, with H and a little subscript 4, and then go to your chemistry, you come back, let me know, and I'll mark that exam for you. So, of course, with the hydrogen strategy in Alberta, it is a pillar of that hydrogen strategy, and it's a little bit too subtle for my liking in the diagrams, but that's why I pointed out, is that hydrogen does not happen without CCUS in this province. The second pillar is enable CCUS. That is a clear statement by Alberta that those two activities and those two industries will be built in tandem in lockstep. So recognize that future hydrogen production, if it is done through steam methane reforming, must have a carbon capture facility attached to it, and therefore you get into now, what do you do with the CO2 that you've captured? You either use it or you store it, and that's where we get to CCUS. So I mentioned that I don't just handle CCUS and hydrogen. Got a couple other areas, and so we'll talk a little bit about renewable and alternative energy, and I got some things to talk about with you folks there as well. So electrification with no or low carbon electricity production is a pathway to decarbonization for the energy industry and for trade. Global energy increasingly is based around electricity, and electrification with low or no carbon electricity production is a pathway to decarbonization for the energy industry as well. Decarbonization and electrification are key to turning electricity generation, which now globally is the largest producer of CO2 emissions, to low carbon energy sources for transportation, heating, and for heavy industry like petrochemicals and refining. Grid modernization enables integration and connectivity of renewables and alternatives and energy storage onto the power grid. That's an important feature for you folks. We'll talk about that in a second.
Could you repeat that last comment about the largest source of?
The largest source of CO2 emissions globally right now is power generation and electricity production.
I just have a quick question. I should have
Absolutely.
asked it earlier. Are the slides available after your presentation?
Yeah.
Yep, I can, yep, I'll send you a PDF.
I just want to know how many notes I should take.
No, it's okay. I didn't really mean there was an exam. But, no, I'll send a PDF copy to Mark after.
Okay.
Okay.
And back to the largest source of CO2 on power generation, is that because we had so much coal and we're moving to natural gas, or is the natural gas the cause of all of that CO2?
So it is because we use carbon sources for fuel for power generation.
So moving from coal to natural gas has mitigated that.
Has mitigated some of that, but I was referencing globally.
Okay.
So there are other. So we want to. It's a movement to look at no carbon sources of fuel, of ways of producing that electricity.
Okay.
So that will actually take me into right where we paused. So Alberta Innovates is actively looking at small modular nuclear reactors for difficult to decarbonize sectors like oil sands production. Additionally, small modular nuclear reactors have an opportunity to play a key role in electrification for remote, rural, and specifically Indigenous communities to create independent energy solutions. SMRs are part of a suite of technologies for electrification. They also represent the deployment of an entirely new energy business line in power generation for Alberta. That's kind of historic work.
Just a question on SMRs, because it's mentioned a lot in the federal Climate Change Act. I'm just curious, like small.
So what's small?
Yeah, how
so
many
small is
SMRs are
defined
they-
as 300 megawatts or less.
Okay.
And then we would typically say micro is about 5 megawatts. And then we get into, nano and pico and all that kind of foolishness, but you don't need to know that. So small is 300 megawatts or less.
Would we know how many provincially SMRs would be required?
That's a bit of a challenge, and it really looks at the opportunity. Right now, we are really sort of just convening the conversation. We started having some work with supply chain to figure out, okay, well, what would we need to actually build this business line? Alberta is in an interprovincial memorandum of understanding with 4 provinces. So it's Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and New Brunswick. So the way I like to think about that MOU is actually really practically. So Alberta has an emissions problem and needs that technology. Saskatchewan has fairly substantial technology in nuclear and has uranium. And Ontario has the operational expertise in nuclear power generation, as does our friends in New Brunswick. So it's collaboration of the best kind. Why would we go and reinvent the wheel when we can learn from our siblings? Canada is this wonderful, country of 13 dysfunctionally family-oriented children who, outside, we sound wonderful. And we all look wonderful in the family picture. But, we're with too many middle children. So, I'll let you click forward there. Bioenergy and circular economy work is really driven by a need to transform our waste management, enhance recycling, and decarbonize fuels. So here we're talking about plastics and biofuels and renewable fuels and waste management, conversion of waste, all of those great things. So while plastics deliver many benefits to society, and I absolutely started my career at Nova Chemicals, so I know this. And the way I explain this to folks is I say, you don't have an artificial heart without plastics. You don't have heart stents without plastics. You don't have all of the PPE that we needed in the COVID-19 pandemic without plastics. But we also have all of the waste that came from those businesses using all of that plastics, and we need to mitigate that. And if we can move towards making higher value plastics, then we have companies with substantial technology, research capacity and innovation, making the next version of those heart stents and making the next version of those nanoplastics and picoplastics and instead of making shopping bags. So there's an increasing awareness of the potential impact of chemical components of plastics on human health and the environment. Alberta Innovates supports the new plastics economy vision, where we eliminate the plastics we don't need. We innovate to ensure the plastics we do need are reusable, recyclable, compostable, and we circulate the plastic items we do use to keep them in the economy and out of the environment. We're actively developing a technology roadmap and a circular economy strategy for Alberta in concert with Alberta Energy within the scope of, again, that natural gas vision and strategy. On the bioenergy front, the Clean Fuel Standard targets transformative change in how fuels are produced and used in Canada. This is crucial for long-term decarbonization and to put Canada on the path to net zero emissions by 2050. So things like extended producer responsibility, which requires you to trace plastics from manufacture to end of life, are going to be something that you need to be thinking about. One of the most interesting projects this year that I've been, one of the most interesting projects that I've been engaged with and that I was really proud to be able to fund from my team is a project called Rusty Chain. You can look it up on our website. There's a 2-page information on it, but it's really work that we're doing with BASF to look at being able to put digital tracers in plastics at manufacture so that we're able to trace them through to end of life using blockchain technology. I've got the coolest job ever. Critical minerals. Critical minerals demand is driven by batteries and e-mobility, straight up. Lithium is a key mineral in the energy transition. So lithium market growth is driven by the need for lithium-ion batteries, for electronics, electric mobility, and energy storage. ESG performance, environment, social, and governance, creates an opportunity for innovation to reduce carbon footprints and water consumption and lithium extraction. Global demand for metals and critical minerals is increasing rapidly in response to growing populations, technological advancement, and the global shift towards a lower carbon economy. These minerals are actually essential to producing the technologies and the products that actually support a low carbon economy. And you'll see that in the middle section. Alberta has a favorable geology for many metallic and industrial minerals such as lithium, uranium, vanadium, nickel, and some of the rare earth elements, along with potash and diamonds. Alberta has the minerals, the know-how to deliver an improved clean technology response, and the battery metals and the energy storage supply chain challenge. So let's get going. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk a little bit about how we actually get here in our competitiveness. So I mentioned at the very beginning that clean technology addresses sustainability while creating opportunity for economic diversification in Alberta. The biggest opportunity in clean technology is the need to actually deliver a just energy transition. Now, lots of talk about what that means. Lots of people will say just energy transition means just get her done, and it's an urgency thing. No, There's also the just get off oil. No. My peer, Brian Helfenbaum, who leads Advanced Hydrocarbons, will give you an entire white paper that we've written on bitumen beyond combustion and what you can do with bitumen beyond combusting it for fuels in terms of carbon fiber and advanced materials, asphalt binders, and because you're still going to need roads, all those types of things. So we're good. This is about inclusion. To deliver a just energy transition, it's going to actually require Albertans to make an attitudinal shift. We have the mistaken notion that one clean technology will replace the oil and gas industry, which is not true. And the other barrier is thinking that somehow Alberta is not a player in clean technology. That's really untrue. Clean technology is actually on the upswing in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and has a growing interest for the large energy players as well. Alberta is now about energy in many forms. Alberta's energy offering is pluralistic, as should be the entities that deliver it. Every single board table that I've ever seen is big enough to accommodate diverse voices. No one is actually left behind in a just energy transition. Alberta can actively deploy the same skill sets in a just energy transition. Let me give you an example. Consider the clean technology work of Ever Technologies. Ever has a closed-loop geothermal demonstration project, which Alberta Innovates was the first to fund in my team as well. This geothermal power generation demonstration project highlighted the skills of our drilling industry and unlocked new export opportunities for this technology to Europe and the rest of Canada. Ever Technologies used precision drilling, founded in Calgary in 1951, to drill their geothermal wells. How is that leaving anyone behind? That's old dogs, new tricks. Ensuring Canada's and Alberta's and Calgary's energy transformation is authentically inclusive and is prioritized is a challenge to achieve. Having incremental women in STEM fields, especially in engineering, in my view, will facilitate women participating in and leading the energy transformation. Women are drawn to clean technology in a high percentage, relatively speaking, but are still significantly underrepresented in clean technology overall. When I think about building operators, most of you have a Class 5 power engineering ticket. Some of you do, absolutely, okay. And I'm looking around this room and I see my sister here and my sister there. Your work going in the future is about efficiency and clean technology. In Canada, gender equity in the economy could bring another $150 billion in GDP to the country. That's the prize we're leaving on the table. To put that in context, the Alberta provincial budget for the previous year was around $50 billion. In one of their blogs last year, the Centre for Innovation Studies stated the rate of women's entrepreneurship in Alberta is almost 90% of the male rate. Apparently that's one of the highest ratios in the world. The Canadian average was only 66%. In Alberta, 30% of women are involved in startups compared to 13% on average elsewhere in the country. There's something happening here, different. Let's talk about income gaps and wage gaps and ways to have women participate and lead the energy transformation. Let's talk about my favorite topic this weekend, a PEG app. So, as a licensed professional engineer, yeah, I wear the ring, but I actually have a stamp with a beaver on it. I have better jewelry than this, truly. Every year, as a licensed professional engineer, I receive information that tells me how much less I'm compensated than my male peers. Every year, for 26 years running. Last year, in 2021, was the first year that APEGA showed data that the industry had actually closed the wage gap for engineers in training. So up to last year, from day one, the day they signed their employment contract, women engineers in this province were compensated 2.4% less from day one. So now I don't know what happens between them finishing university, moving out of their parents' basement, and starting a job up in Fort Mac that created a 2.4% wage gap. Nothing. Of course, what's actually missing from a PEGA's analysis are the intersectional realities. I live those intersectional realities as a Black woman and as a professional engineer. Intersectionality, not a kooky academic theory as once espoused by a former premier, factors into my daily living and my compensation. I know it, I feel it, but I have no quantitative data that actually demonstrates it. We don't collect race-based data in engineering. We don't collect it anywhere in Canada. Healthcare, housing, finance, labor, and employment, except for some folks at Stacks Canada, right? Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. Grid modernization used to solely be about cost, reliability, and performance. Now it needs to be about cost, reliability, performance, sustainability, energy equity, energy access, energy affordability, energy independence. Energy storage is a really great example of what a practical, just transition could look like. I drive a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. I literally walk or drive my talk. I should be able to use my vehicle as an energy storage tool at my home. So if I'm using my vehicle as an energy storage tool, that gives me decision-making and choice in my energy consumption. I am now, because of that decision-making and choice, an empowered energy citizen through clean technology. Here's another place where building operators play a role. How are you making it feasible for EV owners to charge their vehicles while parked in the buildings you operate? How are you looking to balance your energy loads from the grid with that new feature of random EV owners rocking up to your facilities? That needs to be on. It needs to be on your radar and actually needs to be an active role, an active piece of your decision making right now. We need to put an inclusive lens on the development and deployment of clean technology. When advising young engineers, my counsel includes having them ask themselves critical questions about their work. Who, by the nature of your work, could potentially be marginalized? Who will be excluded? How are you authentically advancing equality through your design and engineering work? It's the same thing with innovation and the work we do in clean technology. Many of the solutions that are required for the energy transformation are engineering solutions. Energy storage is a great example of that again. Energy storage is needed to enable integration of renewables onto the power grid, but additionally, I said it before, I don't know if you caught it, but energy storage and the corresponding technology development to enable it can contribute to energy independence, energy access, energy affordability, and energy equity, particularly for Indigenous and remote communities. That's the transition that I'm passionate about and I feel a bit called to deliver. So, how do we put an inclusive lens on clean technology? And I offer this to you. So this is me combining a little bit of my several lives, but the image on the left is a set of equity guiding questions that we actually use at the Calgary Police Commission when we're in every meeting and around every decision, and we call them the ABCDEs. But it really, we don't say them out loud, we just know those questions, and we are reminded of those questions as we're thinking through any topic, whether it be a challenging one or, the budget for Hawks. This is a healthcare example that I've got clipped there in that Reuters article, but it's relevant to all of us when we consider the mechanism by which this exclusive approach to technology development continues to manifest itself. So everyone here knows what a pulse oximeter is. So it's the thing they put on your finger and it measures your blood oxygen content. You go see them in the hospital, and, okay? Pretty fundamental diagnostic tool in the pandemic when we were dealing with respiratory illness and oxygenation. So in this article, and I'll give you the clip for it in the PDF, but the quote that's actually personally crushing to me is this one. It's been known since the 1970s that skin pigmentation can throw off readings, but the discrepancies were not believed to affect patient care. So medically, we've known for 50 years that pulse oximeters as a diagnostic tool report poorly on Black patients, but no one seemed to care or find another tool by which to assess blood oxygen content on Black patients. Ouch. So I'm an engineer. When I speak to engineers, I ask them a few critical questions, as I said. First, I tell them to learn how to write. Yeah, I know. Then again, I ask them, who by the nature of your work will potentially be marginalized? Who will be excluded? So again, it's the same thing. And we need to think about that as we design new technologies, particularly clean technologies, that are meant to serve the full population, not just one set of people. For a clean technology project for me, in which public dollars, Alberta, your public dollars is made, we should be able to ask project developers and proponents, how would this successfully be deployed in an Indigenous community using Indigenous ways of knowledge and knowing? So, I leave that as a call to action and hopefully a little bit about hydrogen. You probably have way more questions than I gave you, but I'll take them because I'm brave like that. But at the end of the day, clean technology addresses sustainability while creating opportunity for economic diversification. But in Alberta, we do that well when we do it inclusively. So thank you.
So yeah, anybody that would like to field the question of Heather?
And I promise I'll be nice.
She doesn't bite, I guess.
What,
No. Go
what
ahead.
technologies were you referring to when you speak of energy storage? 'Cause
So,
there's-
yeah. So there's a number. So there's flywheel technologies. Hydro is actually even considered an energy storage technology because you can do pumped water storage. Primarily battery technologies and a couple of different stage of batteries. So of course your basic lithium-ion batteries. We're looking at some zinc oxide right now. So I'm going to say the solid oxide type batteries are a thing. Vanadium is actually much better than lithium, but a little bit more challenging to extract, and the process is gross, technical term, for water use as well as I'm going to say off waters and brines and things of that nature. But vanadium is actually a much stronger battery proponent. Vanadium is actually available in oil sands and oil sands tailings, so there's a lot of work there. So it's another piece of circular economy that we're looking at. But the energy storage, there's pumped gas, compressed air storage that we're looking at. So it's a pretty broad range of energy storage technologies.
From an energy storage perspective, for building, batteries are primarily used for offsetting peak demand. Is that pretty much it?
Right now, I would say for buildings, depending on the size of your building and your connection to the grid, you would probably use it for mostly right now, I'm gonna say backup reserves and outages. You're offsetting peak demand, and all of those reserves and load shedding type activities are typically managed by the ISO and the system operator. But you would primarily use them right now for as a generator, if there was a full outage, or for backup power. There's a clear opportunity to change that culture and to change that operating, those operating parameters, to expand the conditions under which you could use a larger energy storage or battery deployment. And then, of course, thinking about the integration of e-mobility, and so if you have a number of clients, residents, commercial users, depending on the facility, who are now bringing e-vehicles, whether they be bikes, cars, trucks. We're also looking at heavy duty trucking and e-technology there. eCamion's a company out of Montreal that actually does electric garbage trucks. Sorry, it's only Tuesday. So there's a lot of work happening there. Buses, particularly looking at buses that do short haul routes, and so would have an opportunity to recharge. School buses are a perfect opportunity for electrification. They do a route in the morning. They go back to a depot and charge. They do a route maybe at lunchtime for the kindergarten half day. They do a route after school. It's thinking differently. Please.
You mentioned EV charging facilities in buildings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not aware of any new building that's being built in Calgary that has EV charging facilities yet.
And that's a problem.
I agree. And is there any kind of incentive, either from provincial, from federal, from municipal government, to incent that kind of technology, or even I don't want to say mandate, but incent sounds nicer.
Yes, absolutely. So it's been a bit of a gap. That's me being really polite for Alberta in terms of incentives for electric vehicles and the infrastructure to support them, both in buildings and in the surrounding campus of your building as well. So I will say it, I drive an EV, and you drive an EV in Alberta for the good of the world. I received not a single incentive for doing so. Where if I had lived in my birth province of Quebec, I would have received almost, I think, $7,000 on my car. So that's the first thing. So I would suggest that you would want to speak to your Minister of Jobs, Economy and Innovation and insist that there be incentives for EV drivers. The other thing that I will tell you is that I am actually a part of what's called the NMAX Charge Up program. So, and again, that was a personal choice, but I work in research and innovation, so I have to participate in trials because that's just who I am. I do it medically too. NMAX actually paid for the EV charger that's in my garage, and they have a transponder in my vehicle. So they track my driving behaviors, they track my charging behaviors, they track my electricity use, and I give them all of my personal data for the price of an EV charger in my garage, which I'm not all that fussed about, but hopefully that data will contribute to them having confidence that they can roll out larger programs for personal EVs across the city. The gap in that program, and I've told them this and they know this as well, is multifamily buildings. Where my house is actually a condominium, but it's still a 1,400 square foot house, but, and that was actually gonna be a little bit of a challenge until they realized that my house was a standalone house because it was under a condominium scheme, that they weren't gonna be able, like they were literally gonna kick me out of the program when they realized that, until they realized it was, I had a separate garage. But that doesn't mean that multifamily buildings aren't a priority. And you think about, we're in the Beltline in this conversation, and so many of Beltline residents, because of the nature of their proximity to all of the services and their work and their community, an EV is an ideal vehicle for their transportation. And it's not been a requirement to have the capacity and capability built into new infrastructure. When I think about building codes in Alberta, we've been very slow to modify building codes. If I recall, the last modification of the building code basically only just recently happened, and it took out the fact that you could build a soddy in like the 1930s, and so, because that was still in there.
Cal,
Sorry, go.
You mentioned that
I'll come back.
Alberta is the biggest producer of hydrogen. And
Yes.
then a sentence later, you mentioned tidewater and pipeline in the same sentence.
Yes.
How feasible is it to actually, ship that to tidewater?
So it's like with everything with Alberta, it's an ambitious objective. It's even more ambitious because the hydrogen strategy actually has an expectation of an export market by 2030, which by my watch is 7 years away. Yeah, no joke, hey? Like, so it's ambitious, but I'm of the mindset where we can talk about how ambitious it is, or we can get to work. And I would much prefer to get to work on it. So there are many conversations about marine vessels, and I will tell you, I can't tell you that, sorry. I will say that there are technology developers who are working on technologies for marine vessels for transportation of hydrogen. In terms of the pipeline requirements, C4 Technologies and their peers are actively working on how to deal with embrittlement issues and how we would actually transport hydrogen from Alberta to tidewater. You may need to do it through a liquid organic hydrogen carrier like ammonia, and then that's another challenge. I saw your eyeballs. It's okay. And that was good though. That was a good reaction.
That's your reaction.
Angst. That was angst. It was good. Well done. But again, there are other means. So transportation is a clear technology pillar. Also production. Also storage. Also market end use. But there are some serious gaps to close.
It sounds like it. And socially acceptable means of transportation to use, I guess, the Quebec
Absolutely.
Premier's wording.
So I'm going to do this because my comms people think it's really funny, but they realize that I literally have imaginary conversations with my mother. So my mother died like 2 years ago, but I literally still like talk to her in my head when I'm trying to do stakeholder and figure out how technology would be accepted, because she's my benchmark for this. And I have to tell you, my mother is Jamaican, so this is gonna come out way. So it's like, so mommy, what would you do if I told you I was gonna put a little bit of hydrogen in your natural gas? Well, Heather, why would you do that? Well, Mom, it's gonna help with your environmental performance, and it's gonna decarbonize, which means gonna basically we're gonna be better off environmentally, and your fuel cost. Is it gonna cost me more? No, Mom, it'll probably cost you about the same or less. All right then. So you don't have any other questions, Mom? Well, who's gonna do it? Well, you? I'm like, well, people I direct, Mom. Yes. Okay, well, that's fine. You have no more questions? Heather, I paid for wholly my education for you. So if you are telling some people how to do this and it's good, then it'll be fine. So out of that, again, this is because it's my mother, right? So it comes back to Albertans understanding and trusting who's doing it. So do we have the regulatory structures? Do we have the technical research? Do we have the innovation testing and validation pieces? Understanding the benefit and why we're doing it. We're doing it to deliver our environmental performance and to reduce emissions. And is it going to cost? And what's it going to cost me? Is it going to cost me more or less? Because that's what my mother wants to know. She retired. She was a retired nurse, fixed income. She needs to know what is her gas bill going to be. That's it. Back to you.
The EV side again on providing EV facilities.
Mm-hmm.
I think Calgary declared a climate emergency here a year ago, and we still don't seem to have any way of getting EV charging in any new buildings, let alone into old buildings. Who needs to initiate that? Is this a provincial thing or is this a municipal thing?
I think it's all of us.
I'm trying, but I'm not having any luck.
I appreciate your efforts, but I really think it's all of us. So I'm going to throw on another one of my hats and remind you that I'm also a commissioner of the Calgary Police Commission. I also chair the Finance and Audit Committee. So I had the accountability of actually taking this idea of a climate emergency and figuring, okay, well, what does that mean for the Calgary Police Service? Who has a fleet of vehicles, you see them regularly, who have helicopters, and who have buildings. They're called police stations. So that climate emergency for me is a modification of processes, of policies, of procedures, of assets. For me, it was a fundamental way to change the way that we think. So I am literally at the point of thinking about a police car, and I had to go to police school for like a whole day on a Saturday, and they're trying to show me how they actually like surround a suspect with police cars and police and all kinds of things. And I actually asked the one sergeant, I'm like, what do the lights on the top of the car run off of? And he was like, the car battery. I'm like, so that's why you can only idle the car for so long, and you actually have to turn the police car back on because you're going to run out the battery running the woo-woo lights. And my entire I could have like it's not that I could care less about how they were surrounding a suspect and all that. That was all very interesting, trust me. But I was very much thinking about climate emergency. And if I were to transition a police vehicle to an EV, how does it work? So I think it's all of us, and thinking about it in our daily lives. And I'm gonna say regular people. I'm not regular people because no, like I'm in the trial. I've worked for the ICE. Regular people think electricity comes from the wall. We don't understand how our energy is generated and how our lives are electrified. And that's fundamental. I buy gasoline not gas. Gas is natural gas, gasoline. I buy gasoline once a year. That's a fundamental change. I now actually have to pay the full price for the car wash because I never, right? And it's a different lifestyle. It's an attitudinal shift in your way of thinking. So to answer your question, I don't think it's one person or one government's responsibility. It is all of us, and we need to be thinking differently. And if we're noticing that a business, an industry, a government, a community is not thinking differently, we need to alert them twice, 6 times on Sunday.
I agree with Peter completely. I work in sustainability for a commercial real estate portfolio, and I find a lot of the things are hard to find where the funding is at. I think it was about a month ago I sat in on an EV webinar for the presenters were out of BC, but they were advising that there was some federal incentives and there's a deadline, yada yada, to apply for. But around that note, around sustainability and funding and how you can get things implemented, one thing that I've been looking at recently is ISO 50001, and that's all around your approach, or everyone's approach around changing the mentality and the culture within an organization. It's something that I feel is important inside of the company that I work for, is changing the entire mindset around sustainability, because I could yell sustainability all day, every day, but everyone's just going to think that I'm crazy. But whenever we implement a sustainability action plan, if we don't have a framework in which we're holding ourselves accountable. Anyway, I'm just curious what your thoughts on ISO 50001. If that's important, if you've seen success, I think it's relatively new. But do you think something like that is relatively crucial for the success of an organization's environmental portion of their ESG goals?
So I haven't read the standard, and so I can't speak directly to the elements of it. But from what you've explained to me in terms of having a manner in which to hold oneself accountable and to measure success or failure or any achievement with respect to sustainability, I think is critically important. I was talking earlier about critical minerals, and I think critical minerals is an interesting space, and mining is an interesting challenge, because we haven't necessarily, we need the minerals to actually facilitate the development of the technologies for a low carbon economy. So it's all the batteries and the lithium and all of that jazz. But if you think about mining as an industry, they are ready for some real change and wins and performance with respect to ESG. Like let's talk about mining from an ESG perspective. Mining, literally, you take up the cover of the earth, you take out the minerals, and sometimes you put that cover back. Let's go to the S, social. Mining is, I don't have a nice way of saying this, but notorious for exploitation of Indigenous labor internationally. Let's talk about G. This is Calgary, so I can say the words BRIAX. Mining has struggled with those governance structures as internationally. So when I think about clean technology and being able to deliver a low carbon economy and also deliver some massive wins from an ESG, and I think it's probably the triple crown win. That's where I think there's so much opportunity. So I think it's you need to have that mindset. You need to have some way to measure it, and you need to have buy-in. But where we can provide those incentives, we're trying, but it would be great if other people said, you know, it would be great if Alberta provided an incentive. I think they might listen. I'm sure over time, well, maybe not right now, but we're in the blackout communication zone, so we're not talking to anybody.
We got time for 2 more questions that I'm gonna ask them.
Oh.
No, not that good. It's not that good. So just a kind of a thought, you know, and you know, I have to admit that I know a little bit, but I don't know a lot about this, but I'm thinking, you know, are we missing something here? So EVs, I agree. I spent some time this summer with an RV, or I was in the RV, and my people I was traveling with were in an EV from New Brunswick, traveling in BC with a trailer. It was a marvelous piece of technology. I must admit that I was blown away. And so they went all the way across Canada and back, and it cost them $1,800. So do the math, right? However, if there was a couple spots there where it was kind of marginal because we were in downtown BC. Okay.
Okay.
Hot, you know, pulling grades, heavy. So, whatever happened to hydrogen fuel cells? Why don't we do a combination of the two? And you know,
Yes.
hello. I mean,
Yes.
we've only been working on this for.
It's okay.
I gotta shut up. But,
For forever. It's okay. No, so just because we're doing EVs doesn't mean we can't do hydrogen fuel cells. Like, they're coming back too. We're talking about hydrogen.
But
Like,
they
it's
both
yes
at the same
and.
time.
Yeah,
Toyota's pushing that largely, aren't they?
yeah. Like,
So
They're, like-
I just, it frustrates me.
that's okay. We have a bad habit of thinking singularly. And again, we need to stop doing that. Like, the answer to most things these days is yes and, right? And it's okay to have more than one solution. There's a bunch of folks that get upset every time I talk about small modular nuclear reactors, and they think I'm just gonna, like, you know, put up, like, you know, Darlington, like right here in downtown Calgary. It's like, no, it's a yes and solution. It's a suite of technologies, right? You've got to do all the things.
Yes. Yes. And so for my next thing, you nailed it. There's many aspects of this, and we have to do all of them. Because there's not one of them that's the solution. It's all of it. Now, you spoke of a roadmap. You know, I know obviously we got to do a lot of pitch-up baseball to get there by some politically determined date. But as far as technology implementation, or even for us in the field to even find out what the next step is, but in order to find out what the next step is, you need to see the map, because there's a tremendous amount of planning here. And so when can we look forward to some kind of a, and not a political statement, a real, this has to get real, you know, so.
So that's a really hard question, Mark, but I'm going to try my best.
Wow.
Because
I'm a dreamer.
That's what I do. So I would think, so in terms of hydrogen blending and hythane, those trials are happening right now. So I am 100% confident that Enbridge is doing a trial on hydrogen blending in Quebec and Ontario. ATCO is currently pursuing one in Fort Saskatchewan. There is another one, I think TC might be engaging in one as well. So those trials are happening now. So I would use that as a green light to start your planning for having hydrogen blends in residential and commercial heating applications. I'm very confident that's going to happen. And again, it's happening in Europe, it's happening in Australia. So if you are looking for the procedures and processes and the how-tos in terms of readying your buildings practically and your operators practically, look to those jurisdictions who have that operational experience to learn. But those trials are very much happening now, so I would say get going.
Okay.
That's the best I can give you.
Yeah, and then I suppose we just have to be confident that it won't be we won't be the last ones to hear that we're doing something tomorrow. It takes a while to turn the bus.
Oh, it's, yeah, and if you turn a boat too fast, you tip it over, so.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
All right.
Again, I thank you
I
very
feel
much.
like I landed like on a negative note.
No.
Something else I can like say, and that's all, folks. Shuffleball change. Thank you very much, Leonard. I appreciate the